Yeah, so the study was we decided to look at the water that was flowing through the river that goes through the Glastonbury Festival before, during, and after the festival. And we wanted to look at the water upstream of the festival and then downstream of the festival. And we had some equipment in our labs here at Bangor University to be able to look at illicit drugs, in particular MDMA and cocaine. And we measured the water flowing into the festival and then the water flowing out. And we found that during the festival and then straight away just afterwards, the levels for cocaine and MDMA were high. So high, in fact, that they could be classed as environmentally damaging, and so this was quite a stark result. I must stress as well, though, that this was the levels will remain high only really for that period of time during the festival. We didn't continue the study to see how long they stayed on for, but it is a quite an immediate spike in the levels of MDMA and cocaine. So we don't know how long that kind of spike carried on for. But the levels were such that they could potentially damage the life cycles and the of certain organisms in the river, and also the actual kind of the ecosystems themselves. So it was an interesting finding.
Have you spoke to the festival? Have you given them a list of actions or suggestions for future events?
I know that my university, Bangor University, has been in touch with the festival, but I do know as well that Glastonbury Festival do as much as they possibly can to encourage people to use the loos, to not publicly urinate, because the evidence suggests, previous research suggests, that it is that urine, that public urination, the drugs which might be in people's urine, finding its way into the watercourse, that could potentially be the main source of the problem when it comes to these results. And Glastonbury does as much as it possibly can to encourage people not to publicly urinate and to use the loos, and that's absolutely crucial. It's fantastic that Glastonbury are doing that, and it is something that we at Bangor University and myself would massively support. These levels of drugs are high, and there are one way to stop them from getting into the river is to make sure that the facilities, the loos, are used properly. There are other things that we could potentially look at, such as using wetlands, constructed wetlands, treatment wetlands, reed beds, even increasing the riparian buffer zone, the kind of the soggy bit in between the river and fields as well, because these we know can act as really good filters for a whole range of pollutants, including pharmaceutical and illicit drug waste.
And Glastonbury is a special case, isn't it, because of its proximity? But I imagine this type of problem could occur at other festival sites, albeit at different levels. Is that right?
We looked at the issue of illicit drugs at Glastonbury, but I most certainly am not saying that this is only an issue at Glastonbury Festival at all. Again, previous research has done similar work, looking at other festivals and other public events, and there is often a spike in the amounts of illicit drugs in nearby waterways for all these sorts of, or for many of these events, especially greenfield festivals which aren't held in urban areas or anything like that. They're held in fields, literally, and a lot of the issue there potentially is people not using the loos, so that the urine, which has the drugs in and the metabolites of the drugs in, that finds its way into the water systems. So it is an issue, or will be an issue, I suspect, for all greenfield sites, and this is why festivals like Glastonbury are doing such good work at trying to encourage people or educate people about the importance of using the toilets, using the loos. Don't publicly urinate.
Can you talk in a little bit more detail about the findings, the impact of the drugs on the surrounding area, on the surrounding wildlife?
So we looked at the actual levels of drugs in the water, and then we looked at previous studies as well to look at the potential impact that those levels of drugs could be having on organisms, on animals, creatures living in the water, and on the ecology of the river system itself. And we found that the levels that we were finding could potentially be environmentally damaging, so they could be having negative effects on the river system. But again, this is the good thing. The good news is that Glastonbury Festival, it's only on for a short period of time. So these huge spikes that we were seeing in the illicit drug levels, that will obviously potentially slow down over time, and so the impact hopefully is not going to be too great at all, but we don't really want any of these kind of levels of drugs hitting our waterways, even for a short period of time. We want our waterways to be as clean as they possibly can. If you just affect something in the river, just even on a short-term basis, it's going to have large knock-on effects. And we know, for example, there's a real clear evidence that eels, European eels, which are a rare protected species in the UK, are very affected by levels of cocaine in the water. And again, in the area around Glastonbury, there is being work done to encourage eel populations, and we need to be doing everything we can to help that process.
In your opinion, would you like to see more regulation, more consideration about this type of concern when it comes to planning large-scale events in fields?
To the best of my knowledge, I think that the regulation of greenfield festival sites is strict, and I know that festival organisers do whatever they possibly can to minimise the effects of their festivals. For example, Glastonbury is doing everything it can to go plastic free, which is great to see. As more evidence perhaps comes out, like our study, simply because we have better ways of monitoring certain pollutants, and also we're starting to understand certain pollutants too, like pharmaceutical waste and illicit drug waste, then I think that yes, we will see those sorts of regulations becoming part and parcel of anyone that wants to organize a festival, and they will have to follow those certain guidelines and rules which will be laid out. So yeah, without a doubt I can see that coming, and that can't be a bad thing if it helps our environment stay a little bit cleaner.